Welcome to the Money and Wealth Show. Brought to you this week by AmericanManganeseInc.com. Here's your host, Danielle Park.
We're at the Agora Investment Symposium today in Vancouver, and it's my esteemed honor to have Mr. Bill Bonner with us, who is the founder of Agora and the founder of The Daily Reckoning, which is this really popular commentary that's read by, 500,000 people?
It goes out to about that many. Yeah.
Right. I first became aware of you as a writer in 2005 when I read Empire of Debt. Mm-hmm. And it's an incredibly good book, and you're an incredibly good writer. I've always admired.
Well, thank you.
Honestly, I don't say that lightly, but you are, I think, recognized as one of the best financial writers around. And what I think is interesting is that when you wrote that book in 2005, you were talking about themes that have really come into full fruition in the last 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, as Addison gave his little opening address at the conference today or yesterday, he said that anybody who was surprised by the debt crisis just wasn't paying any attention at all. We were writing the first book, which was before the Empire of Debt, was Financial Reckoning Day, which I wrote with Addison. And that was about the looming crisis coming because there was too much debt and the reckoning of it. And then it just got worse and worse in the Empire of Debt. We were on this subject for a good 10 years. But the truth is that it goes way back. I mean, before I started writing books, I was the executive director of a public interest group in Washington called the National Taxpayers Union. And then we were trying to do what the Tea Party is trying to do now, which was try to get an amendment passed which would limit government spending, limit debt.
So debt is death. I think that's becoming sort of widely accepted.
On, yes.
How did you come to know that early on in your life, or at what point did that penny kind of drop for you?
Well, I wouldn't say it dropped at any particular point. It was just intuitive. And I just naturally distrust authority in any form. So I was very suspicious of Keynesian economics, which tell you that debt is good, that when you are too far in debt, you can just spend some more money. And I didn't believe it, so I began to think about it and write about it. By the way, I was writing about it before I had thought it through, so some of the first things I was writing were pretty rough. But over the last 10 years, as I've been writing books and writing my daily column, it's amazing how much thinking you do when you have to write for 3 hours every day. And gradually, it's come into focus for me that the debt problem is huge, that it's not going away, and that you can't cure a debt problem by adding more debt.
And you spend a lot of your time, actually, you're mostly based in Europe. Mm-hmm. And I think that I'm not sure if North Americans have fully grasped how this is not just localized in any one particular country. That when you travel in the world, you are aware that human behavior has been remarkably consistent on planet Earth.
It's actually stunning when you realize that in all the Western developed countries, the problems are very similar. And then you start to think about how that could be when there couldn't be more difference between a Reagan and a Mitterrand, for example. But when you start going back and you think about how it works, these are all products of what was started by Bismarck in the 1850s, which was the welfare state. And we all live now in welfare states. And in this conference, which is full of Americans, people think that the Europeans are worse off. I mean, in the headlines there are all the news about the welfare states of Europe and how, for example, there are too many state-paid chauffeurs in Italy and the pensions in Greece are out of line. But compared to America, those are small problems. You know, the real problem is that America operates not only a welfare state, but a warfare state. It is also, it's the world's leading hegemon, its leading empire, and it has the cost of empire, which is about $1.2 trillion per year. So America is a much bigger problem than even the European problems.
And the whole revolving door between Washington and financial institutions has been a personal point of irritation, shall we say, in the last number of years. Do you see, I mean, I think back to the, after the Great Depression, the Glass-Steagall Act being pivotal in terms of severing the conflicts of interest that brought about much of the debacle that happened at that time. Do you think there's going to be, are you optimistic that we could move back towards something that has sort of more clear lines and that might be of use?
No, I don't think it works that way, really. I think that my reading of the history of it all is that that what happens is when you pass legislation, you make people think that they are protected. And the SEC legislation in America made people think that they didn't have to worry about crooks. But in fact, the whole industry became crooked. The industry became corrupt because corrupted by artificially low interest rates, which made people want to borrow and made Wall Street want to lend. Wall Street made a lot of money lending money to people who couldn't afford to pay it back. And you see throughout history that the human beings, the way they work is they won't learn something when they're paid not to learn it. And that's why I don't think regulation will do anything. I think what you need are periodic crises, periodic washouts of debt. And those existed throughout the world up until about 1913 when we passed the Federal Reserve Act in America, and we put in place lots and lots of regulations, especially during the Franklin Roosevelt years. Those things really made the situation worse by making people think that it was all controlled and that ordinary people, before that, and still in Europe, ordinary people didn't think they had the knowledge or expertise to invest in stocks. They put their money in banks and they thought it was safe. And then now people think that they can invest in stocks because the SEC is making sure that it's a level playing field. But it's not a level playing field, it's a joke. And so these people are putting their money in stocks and they're losing their money. I think that will come to an end when they lose a lot of money. It won't come to an end when a piece of legislation is passed.
We have to take a break. When we come back, I'd like to focus a little bit on the way back to sanity and whether you might see any steps that would help. We'll be back in a moment.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision. You're watching The Money and Wealth Show.
American Manganese, Inc. has a manganese deposit in Arizona. Indicated 6.7 billion pounds. Inferred 8.9 billion pounds. Potentially the lowest cost producer of electrolytic manganese. American Manganese, Inc. has a projected cash cost of 44 cents a pound. The metal trades near $2 a pound. Do the math. Trading symbol AMY. Visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 604-531-9639.
The Money and Wealth Show is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Here's your host, Danielle Park.
Back at the Agora Investment Symposium with the founder of this wonderful conference, Bill Bonner. And before we went to the break, we were talking about the way back steps. And you were saying to me that your job as an observer is just to point out the problems. But you have some kids. I have some kids. What do we offer to that generation as any hope, or is there no hope?
Well, there's really no hope. I mean, there's no hope for the economy as it is. People expecting a recovery are going to be disappointed. The economy cannot recover. Those days are gone. And it's a funny thing, but we were talking about human nature, and people mistakenly think that there's been progress in central banking and financial control and so on. There hasn't been no progress whatsoever.
Other than the debit card.
Yes, that's a big progress. The ATM machine is progress. But in central banking and things like that, there is no problem. It's cyclical. People do something stupid, they learn their lesson, and then they don't do something stupid for a while. But those cycles go on for decades. And we have had a very long cycle of growth in debt. Started right after World War II, when we had 30% of GDP was private debt. That ratio is now around 300%. And that ratio needs to come down. There's just too much debt. And now there's government debt building up too. So what we have to see is a washout of debt in which the debt goes bad. And the people who own the debt suffer losses. And after they suffer losses, they will not be as ready to lend money again. And that's the cycle, the great cycle of debt contraction and expansion. And that's the way it works. You know, like there's certain things that just don't get better with time, and love is one of those things. You know, they haven't improved that over the millennium, and they haven't improved central banking either. But
individuals surely can live with some self-restraint, rules, looking out for their own best interests. That would be part of the libertarian idea of strength.
Or any idea, yeah.
Right. So there's hope in that, isn't there?
Well, there's hope for the individual.
They can learn to live without debt, for example.
Absolutely.
Learn to be look after.
Yeah, and your children should be saving money in gold. They should be working hard and doing all the other things that we've known for many generations is the way to financial success.
Your latest book, Dice Have No Memory, just came out, was it this year?
This year.
Yeah. And basically, big bets and bad economics from Paris to Pompeii. This is about this theme again in the next decade. Is it taking it from where Empire of Debt sort of left off?
Sort of, yes. It's a collection of essays that ran from about 2005 up to 2010, I think. There might be even some more recent ones there, yeah.
And basically about the global nature of the issue and...
Well, the globalness is not about the global nature of it, but since I was traveling a lot, I just had an opportunity to observe. And one thing I did observe, this talks about the Pampas, is that Argentines are way ahead of us. You know, they've been through these cycles lots of times, and they know how to do it. The average Argentine taxi driver knows more about economics than people on the Federal Reserve Government Board.
And has a healthy disrespect for government, I would
Absolutely.
assume.
He's putting his money somewhere else. He's hiding it. He's no fool.
It strikes me, too, that there's a lot of hope or optimism these days about China. And surely the Chinese are one of the most perennially distrusting of their governments of pretty much any country. And for good reason.
I try to distrust all of them.
So if you're, going back to the individual lessons they can take, other than live within your means and don't trust governments and don't have debt, is there anything else that is helpful?
Yeah, floss your teeth.
Floss your teeth.
That's an important one, yeah.
Excellent. We're going to take a break and we'll be back with Bill Bonner.
You're watching The Money and Wealth Show.
Molycorp Gold Corp has substantial assets. Magnesium deposit, inferred 52 billion pounds. Molybdenum deposit, indicated 1.9 million tons. Inferred 1.8 million tons at 0.087% MO. Past silver producer, average 182 ounces per ton. Trading symbol, MOR. Website, molycorp.com. Or phone me, Larry Ray, at 604-531-9639.
The Money and Wealth Show is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. Here's your host, Danielle Park.
Back at the Agora Investment Symposium with Bill Bonner, and before the break we were talking about how pervasive and consistent human behavior has been with its abuse of credit in the last number of years. So now you were saying the Americans have this obsession with deflation and other places have obsessions with inflation. Which of those scenarios do you think is most likely?
Well, I think they're both likely, but I think the point is that people react to what they have known. They go through the cycles over and over again, and in the U.S., the cycle that motivates central planners and Fed governors is the cycle of the Great Depression. Ben Bernanke is afraid of a credit deflation. He's afraid of living through the Great Depression again, and he thinks he can stop it. And he thinks he can stop it by printing money, by making credit available to people. Meanwhile, in Europe, what's in their mind, they recall the inflation in Germany in the 1920s. They recall that not only made people very poor, but it led to The rise of the Nazi Party in Germany led to the collapse of Germany, led to the war, led to all kinds of things. And even in France, they devalued the currency in I think it was 1959 or 1961. They devalued it by 100 times so that an old franc was worth a penny. And people remember that too. And then they changed from the franc and the Deutschmark to the euro. So they have a more concern about the value of their money. And Americans don't. Americans think that the dollar is good and good forever. But I think the surprise to me, to most people, is going to be that the dollar does not do nearly as well as they expect it to do.
So in terms of the euro, and it's amazing to me that those many disparate cultures actually did that deal with the devil in the sense of coming together with the collected currency. Do you feel, when you're living in Europe today, do you feel that people are feeling a great sensitivity or vulnerability to that common currency? And do you see that the euro will go away and they'll go back to different denominations?
No, I think that what you see in Europe is a great confidence in the euro.
Still?
Yes, in the core countries, in France and in Germany. The euro is a great thing because it makes trade much easier between these countries, makes people easier to plan, to do deals and so on. And that is important to the main countries. It certainly has been a subject of great cause of temptation in the peripheral countries like Ireland and Greece. And those countries may go off of the euro, but I don't think the euro is going to disappear. It's a good currency, and it'll probably, because as long as the Germans and the French hold together, it'll probably be a good currency for a long time.
So do you think that there's a limitless appetite, though, for Germans and French to continue to bail things out, to continue to write checks?
Oh, no, I don't think there is, but I think that's a good thing. I think they should stop writing checks immediately. Let the Greeks go broke, let the Irish go broke, and that would be a good thing.
And the contamination to countries like Spain and Italy, that's just...
Well, we'd have to see where the dominoes stop falling. They would fall, and the banks in Germany and France are heavily exposed to this debt. So there would be a lot of people who go broke. To me, that's a good thing. Debt is bad, and getting rid of it's good, and people going broke is getting rid of debt. And the people who should get rid of debt, should go broke, are the people who made the stupid loans in the first place. They're not the taxpayer. But now, in both North America, and in Europe, the tendency has been to try to collectivize bad decisions. So that in Europe, they want the guy in Germany who's got up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work for the last 30 years, they want him to pay for the layabout in Greece. Of course, he doesn't want to do that. But in America, we do that all the time. In America, a small part of the country, namely the financial elite, can make disastrous errors of judgment, as they did in Wall Street, making trillions of dollars of losses, and those losses will be put onto the guy who works in Texas in an auto repair shop. To me, these are stupid things. Collectivizing debt merely allows debt to increase. And since we know the real problem is the size of the debt, we'd be better off not allowing that to happen. And
the whole credit derivatives overlay, the magic. I always look at credit derivatives as the sort of line of credit to the world, and it's something like $1.4 quadrillion today. So, do you think, I think of Matt Taibbi's analogy of bankers being like the vampire squid on the face of humanity. Do you think we're ever going to get that turned around so that banks go back to servicing individuals and supporting entrepreneurial pursuits? Or are they going to continue to be sucking the sap, so to speak?
Well, they're going to continue to be parasites. And they're going to be parasites as long as they're allowed to be parasites, because parasitical business is, by its nature, more profitable than real business, especially in America, where real business is not very profitable now.
So how do we stop that then? You're saying that they're parasitic, that regulation is not the solution in your view. How do we stop the parasite?
We don't stop it. It stops on its own, but only after the parasite has killed the host.
So it has to basically blow up.
The system has to work through these problems, and these problems are fundamental systemic problems. They're not little problems. And the only way those are cured is by letting it go. If there were a political will to just cut off Wall Street and to raise interest rates instead of lower them, it could be done. I don't think that will ever be available to us. I think instead what happens is that the system rolls along, the debt increases, especially America. I'm talking about America. Europe's a different case. But in America, both politics and economics point towards more and more bailouts, more and more funny money, bigger debts, and finally a very, very big blow up sometime in the future. It could be years in the future.
And so how do you get the, does prosecution of some of the culprits help, do you think, in terms of the demonstration of a sea change in opinion or attitude?
No.
You don't think that rounding them up and putting them through public hearings, none of that would have any effect?
Well, maybe a hanging or two might help, but I don't really think that makes much difference. It gives a false impression that the problem has been solved. You know, you bring out the culprit, you march him and let him do the perp walk through Manhattan, then you hang him in the public square, and people say, well, that problem is over. But that problem is not over. It's not a problem caused by a few bad people. The system is corrupt.
Individuals have this lurking within us, though, at all times. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, and that always has to be, we always have to be on our guard, and those people always have to be prosecuted and hung. But that doesn't mean that the situation has changed, especially not now. We're in the middle of something. We're not at the end of it. And at the middle of it, you've got a lot more to go. Nothing, you know, that problem that began, the crisis of 2007 when Countrywide Financial went broke, that problem is still there. There's been a lot of write-down of property, real estate debt, but all the other debt's still there. There's still a lot of consumer debt, and it's probably gone down from about 300% of GDP down to maybe 280% of GDP, and maybe it should be around 100 or 150%. So we've got years of write-downs, bankruptcies, foreclosures, all kinds of stuff coming. And that's, of course, why the government has to react the way it does with more cash and credit, because if it doesn't, they will trigger a deeper recession and they won't be able to stand it politically.
We'll be right back with more from Bill Bonner.
You're watching The Money and Wealth Show.
American Manganese, Inc. has a manganese deposit in Arizona. Indicated 6.7 billion pounds. Inferred 8.9 billion pounds. Potentially the lowest cost producer of electrolytic manganese. American Manganese, Inc. has a projected cash cost of 44 cents a pound. The metal trades near $2 a pound. Do the math. Trading symbol AMY. Visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 604-531-9639.
The Money and Wealth Show is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Here's your host, Danielle Park.
So we're back with Bill Bonner, and in closing, Bill, can you let people know where they could learn more about the Daily Reckoning?
Oh, yes. Well, I invite all of your viewers to sign up for the Daily Reckoning. I enjoy writing it, and people enjoy reading it, at least most of them. And since it's free, nobody's ever complained that they didn't get their money's worth. And it's at thedailyreckoning.com. Just go to thedailyreckoning.com and sign up.
Great. Well, thank you for giving us some time today, and thank you on behalf of Agora for bringing all these great people together for this conference. We've enjoyed interviewing them over the last little while, and thank you for watching.
The Money and Wealth Show has been brought to you by AmericanManganeseInc.com.